So welcome everybody. I'm hoping you may still be able to hear the harp. There was a technical issue last time, but there's a different technical issue this time. So let's just leave that screen on for a moment, and hopefully somebody will advise if they can hear the harp or not. It'll just help me, and we'll see where we go. I'll be with you in a moment. So welcome everybody, welcome. Dawn tells me she can hear the harp, so I'm hoping that everybody can hear it. Lynn says she can't, but I'm just checking if you can hear me, Lynn. I suspect you've got the same technical issue as you had last time, but we'll see in a moment. So I think we've got Dawn, Lynn, Christine. I know Lewis is joining us later, and a few others soon. So yeah, welcome on this Friday evening. It's interesting, I started doing these, it was very light in the evenings, even until the point where I was finishing them, and now it's already dark, so it's marching on into the autumn here in the UK. And I know that we've got Lynn all the way from Los Angeles, and it does look like we've got the harp playing this time, which is good because the app I usually have open for that was playing up earlier, so I'm glad that that's working. Anyway, welcome. You know, last time I was responding, for those who were on the stream, about global energy shifts and some intense energy shifts that people were feeling. And one of the phrases I used briefly, I think probably only once, maybe twice, was a term perceptual markers, and about losing those as part of self-realization. And it occurred to me that I hadn't used that phrase for a while, and actually it's quite an important thing to be aware of. And I want to talk about a bit about that first before I then go into phase 3 of the letter, and that perceptual marker issue will come up as part of that if we get far enough as well. And then obviously as we go into the letter from God Pt part 3, I think what I'll do is guide you into the meditation at that point and share the insights and so forth from then on. So you remember last time we were talking about going through shifts, dealing with them and managing those shifts and how they were taking place globally. And this is something that is a very much part of the self-realization process, and it can be, from the space of ego mind, quite kind of disconcerting and maybe discombobulating. I don't know if you're familiar with that word, Lynn, in the States. Confusing at times. And one of the major reasons for that is you start to drop or lose focus on your perceptual markers. Now, what is a perceptual marker? Well, a perceptual marker can be really many things. It can be, you know, the family surroundings, the people, mother and father relationships, sibling relationships. It can be things being the way they are for you in life. It can be the job that you have, the role that you're playing. These are all perceptions of the world out there, and unconsciously you might actually start to rely upon these as shaping your reality. And actually, as realization is unfolding, the actual perceptions around these markers, these things, whether they're people, places, events, you know, things in your life, whether it be your job, your family, your relationships, or whatever, they can all start to change, and your beliefs around them start to change. And from the space of ego mind, this can be very disconcerting, very confusing. And this also talked about last time about feeling lost. And when these perceptual markers change as part of the realization process, it's inevitable almost that ego mind is going to feel lost at certain points. Now, in the absolute, the infinite silence, I call it, that which you really are, you truly are, not only is there no perception in the normal sense of the word of something outside of you, people, places, events, relationships, connections, and so forth, there's just simply awareness of the isness, the absoluteness of the self, energy aware of itself. And because nothing is perceived to be beyond that or outside of that, then there aren't really any perceptual markers to speak of. Now, this is very beautiful when you embrace that utterly and totally, because this is the permanence that is spoken of a lot in Buddhism. The absolute, the permanent essence, the unchanging, the unmoved mover, the unseen seer, so to speak. And it's this, if you like, that you're opening into, flowering into the realization of this. And this can't really be described in words. It can only be pointed at. And so that is in stark contrast to how we generally have lived life in the body, where everything is lived by perceptions, whether it be your normal senses or just the things I was talking about earlier, whether it be, you know, people, places, events, jobs, situations, all these kinds of things. Now, as you start to deepen into the realization, these perceptual markers start to change. They start to drop off. Your beliefs are changing. You're opening into a deeper essence of yourself, and you start to lose the markers, so to speak. They start disappearing or falling before your very eyes. They start to feel very unreal. And as I say, ego mind doesn't like this, and it'll bring up all sorts of fears and emotions about it. So the reason I wanted to talk about it again today was because that's in stark contrast to the absolute, where there are none at all. There's just awareness. So if we can be aware of that now, so to speak, in advance, then we can start to see these things that we're placing reliance on, these perceptual markers. They're a bit like crutches for ego. We don't really, from the perspective of self-realization, want to be placing so much emphasis on them and living our life being like by them, and as if life is like that, and that it's dependent upon these things being in place. Actually, life is completely independent of any form of perception or perceptual marker. Life is, in fact, the silence itself, the eternal, infinite silence. And yet we can still have this beautiful form, our body, to experience it. So this doesn't mean to say we don't use our senses, use perceptions or so forth, but what it does mean is we drop the attachment, the identification, and most importantly, the belief in them, that we need these things to live, to be who we are. We don't. We are life, living life as a living meditation. And if you like, the benefit of the form, the physical domain, is that it gives us the opportunity to experience. But we are beyond all of that, the eternal itself. So this hopefully offers a pointing to not to place so much reliance upon these things that we perceive to be important to our existence, when actually they're not fundamentally important to the truth of who we are. It doesn't mean you cannot enjoy them, but it does mean it's a step away from identifying, attaching and believing in those to be fundamental to who you think you are, because who you think you are is nothing to do with who you really are. So I just wanted to explore that whole thing around perceptual markers, perception, as part of that today, just to kind of offer that to you and just measure that, if you like, in contrast to that absolute state of awareness that is not reliant upon anything, and that includes the process of perception. It may seem mind-boggling to this, and in a way it is, because this can't really get that, because it lives by perception essentially. But that which you are is beyond that, and it's independent of these perceptions, these beliefs and these identifications and attachments that come with them. So hopefully that little sharing there, a little pointing there, will just give you something to reflect upon, to meditate upon, perhaps for the rest of the stream, but also going forward, and perhaps, you know, an invitation there to not be placing so much reliance upon these markers as being how your life is, and that actually your life is completely independent of those. And that's a beautiful, that's where the power lies, that's where your truth lies. So I hope that's okay. If anybody's got any observations, questions on that, I'm happy to see them. But if not, we can move on to the letter and the guided meditation. Let's just see what Dawn's saying here. Wow, lol, yes, mind is trying to figure out what you've just said, but I'm detaching from that and just letting it wash over me. Yeah, that's a good choice, that, Dawn. Definitely, it's not something to be figured out, but it is something that is known already, understood from within the heart space. It is actually, you know, in some ways you could say, you know, we use that phrase sometimes quite a lot, mind-blowing, and it's deliberately mind-blowing, but in the best possible sense, or the highest possible sense, because for the realization of the self, we must step beyond, or as that song, was it in the 80s, went, you must be out of your brilliant mind. You must be out of your brilliant mind. Not in the sense of being mad, but being beyond that and seeing that mind is just a concept within itself. And you can even say the mind itself is another perceptual marker that needs to drop, just to reinforce the mind-blowing bit. Anyway, good. Thanks, Don. I'm glad that that speaks to you. So, yeah, just be with that. You know, part of the whole thing with the realization process, it's almost like you're kind of cornering all the concepts and things that we've built around that we call ego mind, and it gets to the point where, okay, I give up, I've got to surrender, I am the self, I am the silence. It's a little bit like that at times, in the nicest possible way, even though it can appear challenging. Okay, so let's get ready for a meditation then, and I'll, we'll, as I say, we'll bring you into the meditation space. Hi Lee, don't worry, you're welcome to join us right here, right now. So I've just been talking a little bit about perceptual markers, so you can always replay that first 5-10 minutes or so later. It's quite an important point that I wanted to explain, but I'll pick up on little bits of it later. So if you want to get yourselves comfortable, whether you're going to sit down, lie down, whatever it is you're going to do, and then just settle down. Now just simply close your eyes. Just simply bringing your attention first to your body. Just noticing the form, the feeling of it. And then just being open from your heart to the experience of spheres of light. The pure universal sense, I am, with nothing after the words I am, just beingness. Just beingness. And as your attention rests on this I amness, this beingness, notice now that it can do so because it must be being witnessed or seen from the deeper essence that is infinite. Silence. So simply allowing your attention now to dissolve completely into and as that silence. Trusting, knowing you are that. And I'll just start to look now at the letter in little pieces and see where we go from there. So previously we'd looked at fear and various other things, the nature of the infinite and what have you. The next part of the letter goes, your cries of pain and anguish and your moments of greatest joy are all heard, never missed. Yet you are always at choice, and this is also a universal law that can never be violated. My invitation for you to join me, not that we are separate, is eternal. It's a choice, yes. So what is being pointed at here in that very last few words? It's a choice, yes. This whole thing about self-realization, it's not a gift, it's not something that's bestowed upon you for great deeds, it's not something that one achieves, it's actually a choice that emerges from within. Put simply, this choice is head, heart, ego, self, true self. Which one are you going to place your trust in? If it's the ego meanderings of ego mind, then the suffering that was spoken of in the first part is inevitable, because in that space, as I was talking about, there's many perceptual markers, many beliefs, many attachments, many identifications, are all changing, causing great stress, because it's at, if you like, conflict with the truth of who you are. There's an inner conflict going on. The choice is individual and ours. In each individuation, if you like, of the silence has that inner choice. You are already the silence, the energy aware of itself, but because of identifying with the ego mind, this has been forgotten, this truth. So the choice is coming back to, do I go with the head, do I go with the heart? Your choice is never violated. It's the silence would never do that to itself. It knows it's the silence, and it knows it's all okay, and it knows that eventually all will come back to itself. In fact, it's already here. But the choice can be made, and this is the great gift of being able to realize the self whilst in the form. The experiential realization of that. So moving on. Now, given that you are created from the stuff of consciousness, energy, you are at liberty to transform literally from within. This transformation is one of awareness. You may have spent all of your life in your body looking down at your feet, so to speak, when there is a whole universe waiting to be realized. Such is the magnitude of this gift of life. So here again is pointing to this inner transformation, this inner switch that can take place, that opens up, shall we say, the entirety of the universe within. Not being a drop in the ocean, but being the entire ocean expressed in a drop. And you're at liberty. You are at liberty, not via some higher power that you may have perceived. This is just an illusion as well, but actually the power is within. The power is within. Moving on further. I don't do things by halves. I only deal in wholes, totalities, infinite to make it clear. The I being used in this letter is always the infinite I. So when the poet Rumi said, "You are not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a drop," this was and remains a very beautiful description of you. And me, yes. All of me is poured into you. Remember, I only deal in totalities. In that same moment, all of me is poured into all. The infinite is like that. Unlimited in, well, an unlimited way. All in no time at all. So where does this leave us then? Well, it means there's only one of us here. One of us constantly transforming, shifting, flowing through life as life. So there's really nothing to fear. You have been part of this picture for all of eternity. This form, this body you have may transform, but you, in your highest truth, will not be lost. You are eternal. All of the infinite poured into each of its expressions in no time at all. This the mind cannot conceive of. No point trying to. You see, infinite is infinite, unlimited in every sense, unlimited. So the famous Rumi quote that I'd forgotten was actually in the letter, and then there it is. You are not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a drop. Yes, what a beautiful description. All of it poured into. This, if you like, is the true abundance. It's infinite. It has no limits to the consciousness, to the wisdom, and yet it has uniquely created this idea of this facet of the diamond that is your form, so that it can experience that form, yet there can still be a deep knowing that actually the form is just an appearance. Actually, it just is the silence, and that's it. All, that fibre optic lamp I use with all the different points of light, all of it there now from the one source. Just looks separate, but it's not. It's just being poured completely. There's no differences in the qualities in the light, in the lamp. They're all the same. Totally unlimited, totally abundant, infinite and eternal, beyond mind, beyond perception, beyond perceptual markers, as I was talking about earlier. Moving on a little further. All your suffering comes from one case of mistaken identity, the small I, that you have thought and believed you are. This body of yours, its story and its experiences, you simply forgot the rest of you by focusing on one tiny element. There's nothing wrong in this, by the way. There's no judgment about it. There's no test here, no exam to pass, no one on the door of heaven. There is no door. It's all about where your attention is placed. when it's focused on identity, which will capture as thoughts and beliefs obsessed with themselves, then suffering is inevitable. For all these are temporary, transient and impermanent, not to be relied upon. It's your trust in the impermanence, identification and attachment to it that causes the suffering. For these impermanent things are like the crutches to ego. They inevitably transform, change, and leave ego floundering. This is putting your trust in an ineffective place. Placing your trust in the permanent, however, is the perfect solution. The universal consciousness, infinite, silence. Yes, that is a energy aware of itself, as itself. That's all that's necessary, an apparent shift of focus. That's really the essence of my invitation to you. Instead of identifying with the impermanent, remember the permanent. Instead of focusing on physical phenomena, focus on silence. So you can see how that part I've just read there captures really everything that we've discussed before, and the pieces I was talking about to do with the perceptual markers. You know, the belief systems, the people, places, events that we identify with all drop, because these things are impermanent, and where our trust needs to be is in the permanent, which is the silence, the infinite itself. It's the classic case of mistaken identity, the biggest one, if you like, in the universe. The thought and belief that I am this body and the story of this body, the small self, when you're not that. It can be quite funny when we look at it at times. Sometimes as people go into a realization, laughter can often come at, oh goodness, what have I been doing all this time when I've been this being the infinite. That's the biggest case of mistaken identity that there is. It goes on to say there's no judgment, there's no test, there's no exam to pass, and no one on the door of heaven. There isn't a test in life, there isn't. Why would the infinite do that to itself? It is the infinite. It just wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense. You are this, end of, as the saying goes. You are this, full stop. This being the silence. So it then becomes incredibly simple. I am this. Accepting, embracing totally that you are that. And the dropping of all the other stuff, the flowering of the self, naturally emerges. It goes on to be reinforced. It's talked about a lot in the Buddhist tradition, you know, impermanence versus permanence. The things of the physical domain are the impermanence, and that includes ego. The absolute being the permanence, and that's where trust is best placed, because then it becomes the highest form of trust, which is not having to trust at all, it's just a knowing. Let me say that again. The trust becomes the highest form of trust, which is not having to trust at all. It's just a knowing one is that. Always that. never not been that, always will be that. Permanent, infinite, silence, profoundly simple, profoundly beautiful. And it all comes about from this apparent shift of focus from the impermanence to the permanence. Instead of focusing on physical phenomena and relying upon those perceptual markers that we spoke about at the beginning, focus on the silence, rest the attention there till it dissolves and there's just the knowing. One is the silence, and then all of the beauty of this domain will still be there to be witnessed and experienced, but now it's coming from a place of knowingness that one is the self. And the stresses and strains of the impermanence can drop. No longer identified with them, no longer attached to them, just simply you are the silence. Therein is the gift. I think I'm just going to go one step further with the letter. The simple fact that the phenomena can be reported or described like your senses, report touch, hearing, sight, and so on, means that all the phenomena are being observed from a higher and actually permanent awareness, the silence itself. Me, in other words. Even the sense of beingness, the pure sense I am, with nothing after the words I am, can be seen, witnessed and reported from this deeper essence. So you must be the ultimate observer, the silence itself. It's the only thing that makes sense. All I truly know is silence. The rest is simply the play of consciousness and impermanent. Only the silence is permanent, and you, my friend, are it, and we are one. All these phenomena, seen, noticed, observed, reported, watched, even the subtlety of the beingness, the pure sense I am, can be observed, seen, sensed. What is it then? That sees that, but the silence itself. And you are that. You must be. You must be. It's the only thing that makes sense. All the rest is the play of consciousness. So when it was said in one of Shakespeare's plays, you know, all the world's a stage. Yeah, right. The greatest virtual reality game ever. Do you go with the role, or do you go with being the silence? Your choice. It's okay. You're the silence. You can do what you like. Just looking Dawn, such a beautiful relief that there is no need to search. The silence is here. I used to have such anxiety, such stress, and it has gone. Thank you. Namaste, Dawn. Wonderful. You know, I think there's a post on the website. It's called "Call Off the Search." Call off the search, because one of the myths, if you like, of the apparent process is seeking the spiritual seeker. And at first it does feel like a seeking, that's for sure. You know, there's not dismissing that. There's definitely a calling that, you know, people feel to, and a looking that goes on. But as we open into the flowering of our truth, it's about accepting the possibility, and then in fact the truth of the fact that actually it is already here and you are it. So that's why there's a piece on one of my cards, see if I can remember the lines I put on there myself. It's realizing, not seeking. Seeing, not looking. And I can't remember the third one I put on there now, but it doesn't matter. They all say the same thing. It's here, and there is no search. Yet, by listening, following the urgings emerging from within, there will be experiences in the physical domain that bring us to the realization. That's what all of life is doing, is inviting us back to the self. And the reason Dawn is able to say those such beautiful words, the anxiety, the stress and so forth gone, is because now her trust is placed much more deeply in the permanence rather than the impermanence. And one is still able to live the life in the form of the body, and have a, you know, an apparently normal life, yet the stresses and so forth, the anxieties, the fears of form drop. Beautiful. So I think you can see from those sections that we've explored tonight why I wanted to go over that bit to do with perceptual markers. And Lee, don't worry, you can listen to that again and pick up on that. So let's just stay in that meditative space for a few more moments. Just knowing now from within that we can safely offer up, so to speak, from within everything, unequivocally, just letting it all go. And like Manuel from Fawlty Towers, I know nothing. Just placing all of the trust in the absolute, the permanence, the silence. This one you can trust. Everything else, just letting that go. Just simply allowing the flower of the isness to blossom. Like the lotus, up through the murky waters to become a beautiful lotus, floating in and as the ocean of silence. This is who you are. And you already know this. You wouldn't be here listening now if at some level you didn't already know this. And it's nothing to do with what might be perceived as me saying this, but it's because there's some knowingness within there that already recognises this. It's like consciousness having a conversation with consciousness about consciousness. You're having this experience with yourself, the big S, self. These very words are being shared by you, with you. It just looks like we're separate and we're not. Good. I'll just put the harp on for a couple of minutes whilst you just let that shall we say marinade, and then I'll come back in a few moments. Good, good, good. Namaste. So, just go with whatever's right for you. I'll just ding the singing bowl now. So if you are lying down or sat down with your eyes closed, feel free to open your eyes whenever feels right for you. Good. So I just realised that Dawn had made another observation here, one after the other fairly quickly. I'm glad that speaks to you. Beautiful, yes, that all ties in. The no entry requirement for heaven has always resonated, and I get laughed at a lot when that awareness comes to me. Well, that's very good, Dawn. I'm delighted to hear that. Yeah, no exam to pass. You're already there. And in that way we can create the experience of heaven on earth. As that song, was it Belinda Carlisle? I think it was, that had many years ago. Yeah, heaven is a place on earth. So let's just see if there's anything else that anybody wants to share whilst you're coming to there. And we'll see if there's anything anybody wants to add or ask. Whilst we're just waiting for that, I just wanted to share now. I think most of you have come to the events at the monastery. I've been able to confirm in the last few days that we can start the new self-realisation programme at the monastery in Manchester, Gorton Monastery, earlier than anticipated. And in fact we've got a couple of dates this year, October and November, and also a couple of dates for early next year, January and February. They're all set for the second Sunday of the month. I think it's October the 14th, the first one, November the 11th for the second, I think it is, January the 13th and February the 10th, I think that's right. Anyway, it's on the website under the events section, find yourself at the monastery. So we've been able to start that programme a little sooner and see how that goes. Looks like from the sharing I did on Facebook early today, there's been a good response to that. So we'll see how that goes. It's a £30 donation to the monastery for each session, running from 11:30 till 1600. So do have a look at those details, but I'll be back anyway at the monastery on the first Sunday of the month doing the Health and Wellbeing Day, but the actual programme we're going to make a start on the 14th. So even if you've been to the existing programme, you're very welcome to come, and in fact that's probably a good idea, provide some continuity. So yeah, that's great news. That was come about sooner than I anticipated. We'll put some of the dates in the diary when I have them, but I am planning, or Sue and I are hopefully planning a longish trip early next year sometime, so that's why there's no dates after February at the moment, but once I'll know when that is, I'll let you know. So that was a bit of news. Also exciting things happening here at our home, which will allow me to offer events from home. We're having a beautiful oak framed pyramidal shaped room, well, roof anyway, an oak framed building with glass panels between the oak panels, which will allow me to have workshops at home for about 20 people or so in the future. So that's great news. That's being done along with a bunch of other things, so looking forward to that. And in terms of sharing these streams, the streams are proving quite popular, it looks, by the views that are happening on YouTube. What apparently I've been told, Lewis mentioned this to me last time at the monastery, if you like the video, and also you have the opportunity to share it and hit subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Those on the chat will be subscribed already, but liking and sharing helps get the word out a little bit further, so if you feel called to do that, that would be great. I think that's all I was gonna say. Christine, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Namaste, Christine. A delight to have you on the stream again, as always. So if there's anything else anybody wants to ask or share, I'll just put the harp on again for a moment, just if anybody wants to type anything, and I'll come back in a moment. Just enjoy the harp, and if there's something you want to ask, do that now. I'm smiling here, Dawn. Yeah, don't worry about that. Yes, I mean, I think in essence, I see where you're going with that, and it is like the practiceless practice and the choiceless choice, but it appears like a choice. Don't worry about it anyway. The key thing is we are the silence. The silence has been chosen to make, if you like, made a choice to make itself manifest. The manifestation has chosen to identify itself rather than remember. It is the silence. So in this respect, it is a bit like a choiceless choice, but from the perspective of being in the form, then one has this apparent choice. But just trust you are the silence. Know that you are the silence. Be open to that possibility, and all the questions will drop. Mind likes to go through these loops and explore all these things, and sometimes we just have to let it all go and just trust. There's a video I have on trusting or daring not to. And the thing about that particular video is we got so used, so conditioned into trusting the ego mind and its many meanderings that we call, you know, a dare. Oh, dare I trust my heart? When actually the dare is to trust the ego mind, because that's going to cause suffering. It's a monumental dare that's happening there. Whereas if you trust the heart, the silence, then it makes that process a lot easier, because this is the permanence, this is the one that truly can be trusted, and there is then no leap of faith. You're just going with that inner knowing, that inner space. So trust that one, the heart space. You're welcome, Lee. Sounds like there's been a few challenges coming up, and yeah, it does happen, and it's completely understandable. It's a part of that apparent journey in the form, and all of us have been there at some point in some way in this manifestation. So the key thing to always remember when stuff comes up is not to see it as a challenge, because mind will want to go there straight away and start to analyze it and start to second guess it and start to judge yourself for it. Just the instant of the awareness that stuff's come, don't take it as a challenge. Drop that word and see it as an invitation to release it. Go, oh, hello, you're here. Thanks for showing up. I know I'm not you. I'll just witness you, surround you with the love from the silence, and just by watching gently nurturing yourself through that process, the miracle will happen in that it's release. It's when we try to figure it out, try to work out what's going on, as you're using there in your expression there, Lee, that it starts to get challenging and difficult. The funny thing is, from the space of the silence, is that it's effortless. So the key is to step back, get into the silent spot, not placing any trust in the stuff. Just embrace the fact that whatever it's come up, whether it's a troubling emotion, a thought pattern, just go, oh, that's interesting. I'm not that, because I just know I am the silence. Accept it as an invitation to release it. But allow yourself to be gentle with yourself. Trust the silence. Trust that it's the effortless grace of that that's going to do the trick for you. And that way, it'll be like a kiss from the inside, a hug from the silence from within. This is the best type of hug, the highest hug, that inner embrace. Let that one do the work for you, Lee. And I'll send you an embrace from the silence as we talk here now, and know that it is emerging in you now, even as we speak. Good, good, good. I'm glad it makes sense to you, Lee. Invitation, it puts it in a complete new light. The invitation home. You're welcome, Lee. So is there anything else for anybody? Good. Oh, glad that's been amazing for you, Dawn. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. So I think we're pretty much done, folks. So yeah, namaste, have a great weekend. I'll close by leaving the harp on for a couple of minutes, and I'll watch out if there's any further comments. But yeah, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for committing this time on a Friday evening to your truth. And to those who are watching after or on catch up, namaste to you also. Many blessings, have a great weekend. And the next stream is a week today, not 2 weeks today, but the 14th of September. That's because I've got a family commitment on the 21st. So the next one is on the 14th of September, 2000 UK time. Many blessings. Enjoy the harp.